Hey everyone, and welcome to another deep dive with us. This time, we're going to be tackling something that I think is on a lot of parents' minds: how to help your child develop strong and healthy self-esteem. We're going to be looking at excerpts from the book Kid Confidence to guide us. And let me tell you, some of this stuff is pretty surprising, even to me, someone who's, read a lot about this topic.
Yeah, it really challenges a lot of the conventional wisdom around raising confident kids. We've all heard about the importance of praise and protecting kids from failure. But what if I told you that those strategies could actually backfire?
Wait, seriously, praising your kids seems like a no-brainer, right? What's wrong with a little positive reinforcement?
Well, think of it this way. Imagine a child who is already struggling with self-doubt. When they're constantly told how amazing and wonderful they are, it can actually highlight the gap between how they feel inside and the praise that they're receiving. It's like saying, "You're so smart," to a kid who's having a tough time in school. It might actually make them feel worse because it kind of emphasizes their struggles. Oh, I see what you mean. So instead of boosting their self-esteem, it might actually make them feel more inadequate.
Exactly. And there's actually research to back this up. One study found that college students with low self-esteem actually felt worse. After repeating the phrase, "I'm a lovable person," it just made them hyper-aware of how unlovable they felt.
Wow, that's a real eye-opener. Another thing that really struck me in kid confidence is this idea of the self-esteem roller coaster. It talks about how kids' self-esteem isn't static, it goes up and down over time.
Yeah, and that's because as kids develop, their understanding of themselves and their place in the world changes. Think about kids around 8 to 10 years old. They become much more aware of how adults react to them, and they start comparing themselves to others.
Right, they're starting to see themselves through the eyes of others and figure out where they fit in.
Right, and that's often when we see a dip in self-esteem. They become very sensitive to both praise and criticism, and even minor setbacks can feel like major catastrophes to them.
Like that story in the book about David, who broke a picture at his friend's house and had like a complete meltdown, yelling, "You think I'm the worst kid in the world," at his mom.
Exactly.
Yeah.
He's judging himself harshly and assuming that everyone else is judging him the same way.
So how do we as parents navigate this tricky terrain? If showering kids with praise and shielding them from criticism isn't the answer, what is?
One of the most important things we can do is understand how kids' perceptions of themselves shape how they interpret social feedback. The book calls this the idea of social mirrors.
Social mirrors, can you explain that a bit more?
Basically, it means that kids are constantly looking to others for clues about their worth. But here's the catch. Kids with low self-esteem tend to filter those social interactions through a negative lens.
So they might dismiss a genuine compliment from their parent by saying something like, "You have to say that you're my mom,"
Um,
because they just can't accept that positive feedback.
right. And on the flip side, they might latch on to any perceived criticism, no matter how small,
Yeah.
and see it as confirmation of their negative self-image.
So it's not just about what we say to them, it's about how they're interpreting those messages based on their own self-perception.
Exactly. And that's why simply praising kids or protecting them from criticism isn't enough. We need to go deeper than that and focus on fostering genuine connection.
Yeah, creating a space where kids feel truly seen and accepted for who they are, flaws and all.
Exactly. Because when kids feel that deep sense of acceptance, it helps them develop a more secure sense of self, which is really the foundation of real self-esteem.
So how do we put this into practice? What are some tangible things parents can do to nurture that kind of genuine connection?
Well, Kid Confidence gives some really practical advice on that, starting with how to respond to misbehavior. And let's be honest, every parent has to deal with misbehavior at some point.
Oh, yeah, it comes with the territory. So what's the first step?
Before you even address the situation, take a moment to cool down. We all know that yelling just escalates things. And when you're angry, it's harder to respond thoughtfully.
Oh, absolutely. I've definitely learned that the hard way. Sometimes you just need to take a deep breath and collect yourself before you can address the situation calmly.
Right. And once you're calm, the next step is to connect with your child before correcting them. Acknowledge their feelings, even if you don't agree with their behavior.
So instead of jumping straight into a lecture, you
Right.
might say something like, "I see that you're upset that you can't have another cookie, but..."
Exactly. It shows your child that you understand their perspective, even if you have to set a limit. And when it comes to offering criticism, the book suggests using what they call soft criticism. It's a three-step approach. That can be really effective.
Okay, I'm intrigued. Break down those 3 steps for us.
The first step is to empathize with your child's feelings. Then briefly explain the problem. And finally, focus on moving forward.
So less lecturing, more guidance and problem solving. I like that.
It's about helping your child learn from the situation without making them feel ashamed. And remember, shame is toxic to self-esteem.
And the book also talks about fostering connection in everyday life, right? Not just in those moments of conflict.
Absolutely. Simple things like hugs, showing interest in your child's hobbies, and reflecting their feelings can go a long way in building that sense of connection and belonging.
I'm really curious about this reflecting feelings piece. I feel like there's a real art to it. How do you do it effectively?
It's about more than just saying, I understand how you feel. It's about accurately naming the feeling and the reason behind it. So you might say something like, it sounds like you're feeling frustrated because you can't find your favorite shirt.
That makes sense. It helps kids learn to identify and articulate their emotions.
Exactly. And when kids can label their feelings, they feel more in control of them.
So we've talked about the pitfalls of traditional praise and the importance of genuine connection. But kid confidence also talks a lot about building competence as a key ingredient in healthy self-esteem.
Absolutely. It's not just about telling kids they're good at things. It's about helping them develop actual skills and a growth mindset.
So how do we do that? What are some specific things parents can do to foster that sense of competence?
Well, one important tip is to focus on effort and strategy, not just the outcome. So instead of just saying, great job on your drawing, you might say, I noticed you spent a lot of time practicing different shading techniques. Your hard work is paying off.
That's a great example. It shows your child that you value the process, not just the final product.
And speaking of praise, the book talks about the importance of offering what they call effective praise. It should be specific, sincere, and focused on progress, not perfection.
So instead of saying, you're the best artist ever, you might say, I love how you used bright colors to create this cheerful picture. I can see how much your drawing skills have improved.
Exactly. Specific and focused on the child's individual progress. And here's another important point. Don't pay for performance. Rewarding kids with money or gifts for good grades can actually undermine their internal motivation.
Because it sends the message that the only reason to work hard is for the external reward, not for the joy of learning or the satisfaction of accomplishment.
Right. And we also need to teach kids how to accept compliments gracefully. I've definitely seen kids get all flustered and start arguing when they receive a compliment.
Oh, totally. They'll say things like, it wasn't that good, or I just got lucky. They might think they're being modest, but they're actually insulting the person giving the compliment.
Exactly. So we need to teach them to simply smile and say thank you when someone expresses appreciation for their efforts.
Accepting compliments gracefully. It allows them to really experience genuine pride in their accomplishments.
Exactly. It helps them internalize those positive messages and build a stronger sense of self-worth.
This is all such valuable information. We've covered so much ground already. From the downsides of traditional self-esteem boosting to practical strategies for building real self-esteem through connection and competence. But there's more. Kid confidence also dives into the complexities of sibling relationships and friendships, which we'll explore in part 2.
I can't wait to dive into that. It's a fascinating area and one that I think a lot of parents struggle with.
Welcome back, everyone. Last time we were getting into the nitty-gritty of nurturing real self-esteem in kids, and we touched on the power of genuine connection. Now let's zoom in on one of the most important, and let's be real, often challenging, relationships that shapes a child's sense of self, their siblings.
Ah, yes, sibling dynamics. It's a fascinating area, full of complexity and nuance, and kid confidence really gets into the thick of it, exploring how those relationships can have a huge impact on a child's self-esteem.
You know, one of the things that really resonated with me in the book is this idea that siblings provide a unique kind of social mirror.
It makes sense when you think about it. Kids are constantly comparing themselves to their siblings,
Yeah.
competing for attention, and trying to figure out where they fit into the family pecking order.
Right. It's like that example in the book where Nathan accuses his dad of favoring his sister Chloe because she's getting help with her homework. He yells, "It's not fair. You always take her side." Her classic sibling drama.
Totally. It highlights how sensitive kids can be to any perceived favoritism or inequality. And remember, those perceptions don't always align with reality. One child might feel unfairly treated, even if the parent or an outside observer doesn't see it that way.
So it's not just about actual favoritism. It's also about the child's perception of favoritism, which can be just as powerful.
Exactly. And it's not just about negative comparisons either. Even positive comparisons can be hurtful, like saying, you're so good at science and your sister is so creative, On the surface, it seems like a good way to acknowledge each child's strengths.
But it can actually create divisions and make kids feel like they're being pigeonholed, like, stay in your lane, your sibling already claimed that territory.
Exactly. And it ignores the fact that kids are constantly evolving. The differences you see today might not be there tomorrow.
The book also talks about how birth order and gender can play a role in shaping sibling relationships. Is there any truth to those stereotypes?
Well, there's some evidence that certain sibling pairs are more prone to conflict than others. For example, studies have shown that brothers tend to be more competitive and less supportive than sisters. And parents of all-boy families often report more conflict than parents of all-girl families.
Interesting. So, what's a parent to do? How can we help our kids navigate these sometimes tricky sibling dynamics?
First and foremost, avoid comparing your children out loud. They're already doing enough of that in their own heads. Instead, focus on celebrating each child's unique qualities and contributions to the family.
Makes sense. And I love the idea of encouraging older siblings to teach younger siblings. The book talks about how that can be a great way to foster cooperation
Yeah,
and reduce rivalry.
it's a win-win. The older child feels valued for their expertise, and the younger child gets personalized attention and support.
And of course, we have to talk about the big one, parental favoritism. Kid Confidence really dives into the research on this, and it's fascinating. Turns out that a lot of parents do show preferential treatment
Yeah.
to one child over another, even if they don't realize it.
It's important to remember that even small differences in how we treat our children can be magnified in their minds.
So if one child consistently gets more attention or praise, even if it's because they need more help or have a more challenging temperament, the other child might interpret that as a sign that they're less loved.
Right, and that can be really damaging to their self-esteem. So what can parents do? The book suggests avoiding the trap of trying to make everything exactly equal.
Yeah, because counting out the sprinkles on each cupcake just isn't sustainable, and it kind of misses the point.
Exactly. It's more about creating a family culture
Mm,
where differences are accepted and celebrated, and where each child feels valued for who they are.
love that. So let's shift gears a bit and talk about friendships. The book highlights how crucial peer relationships are for a child's self-esteem. It even talks about something called sociometer theory, which I found super interesting.
Sociometer theory basically suggests that our self-esteem is like an internal gauge that measures how accepted we feel by others.
So the more accepted we feel, the higher our self-esteem.
Exactly. From an evolutionary perspective, it makes sense. We're still creatures who need to belong to a group in order to survive and thrive.
That makes sense. We all have that innate desire to connect with others and feel like we belong.
Right. So when kids feel rejected by their peers, it can trigger feelings of inadequacy and low self-worth. And as we've discussed, kids with low self-esteem may react to those feelings in ways that actually make the rejection worse. They might withdraw from social situations, become overly sensitive to criticism, or try too hard to impress others.
And that just reinforces the cycle of rejection. It's like a self-fulfilling prophecy. So how do we help kids break out of that cycle? How can we help those who struggle with friendships develop healthy, supportive relationships with their peers?
That's a great question. It's something we'll dive into deeper in part 3. See you then.
All right, we're back for the final part of our deep dive into kid confidence, and we're picking up right where we left off. Friendships and their huge impact on a child's self-esteem. Now, some kids just seem to make friends effortlessly, but for others, it can be a real struggle. Why is that?
Well, as we've been discussing, kids who are already dealing with low self-esteem are often more vulnerable to friendship challenges. They might be extra sensitive to rejection, have a harder time standing up for themselves, or get stuck in those negative thought patterns that can unintentionally push people away.
Yeah, it's like a vicious cycle. The more they struggle, the harder it gets. So how can we, as parents, help them break free from that cycle and build those healthy, supportive friendships they need?
Kid Confidence offers some really insightful and practical advice on this, starting with the importance of teaching kids the difference between simply fitting in and truly belonging.
Hmm, that's a distinction I hadn't really thought about before. What's the difference exactly?
So fitting in is all about trying to conform
Mm.
to what you think others expect, even if it means hiding parts of yourself. You're trying to blend in, be like everyone else. Belonging, on the other hand, is about being accepted for who you truly are, quirks and all.
So it's about being your authentic self, not some watered-down version trying to please everyone else.
Exactly. And Kid Confidence gives some great questions that parents can use to help their kids reflect on their friendships. Questions like, Do you feel like you can be yourself around these friends? Do they support your interests? Do you feel good about the way they treat you and others?
Those are such important questions for kids to consider. It's not just about having a lot of friends, it's about having the right friends, those who lift you up and make you feel good about yourself.
And belonging doesn't always have to happen within that traditional peer group. Sometimes kids need to look beyond their immediate classmates to find their tribe, people who genuinely share their passions and values.
I love that. It's about broadening the definition of belonging. So that could be a sports team, a book club, a youth group, or even an online community where they connect with people who get them.
Exactly. It's about finding those spaces where they can be themselves and feel that sense of connection and acceptance. And on a more practical level,
Mm.
Kid Confidence also offers some really useful tips for helping kids develop specific social skills that can make a big difference in their friendships.
What kind of skills are we talking about here?
Things like knowing how to start a conversation, how to join in when a group is already playing, or how to respond assertively if someone's being unkind. These are skills that some kids pick up naturally, but others may need a little extra guidance on.
Right. It's like those strategies the book suggests for joining ongoing play. It's so common for kids to just hover on the sidelines, feeling awkward and unsure of how to break into a group.
Exactly. Kid Confidence encourages parents to help kids practice skills like observing the play for a few minutes to get a sense of what's happening, and then finding a way to add to the fun instead of interrupting it.
It's about empowering kids to become active participants in their social world, not just passive bystanders.
Exactly. And speaking of being active, the book also talks about encouraging acts of kindness as a way to build connections. Simple things like giving a compliment offering to help, or inviting someone to join in an activity can go a long way in creating those positive social interactions.
And it creates a ripple effect. When you're kind to others, they're more likely to be kind to you.
Absolutely. And it's not just about teaching kids how to be kind to others. It's also about helping them be kind to themselves. The book talks about self-compassion, especially when kids are facing friendship challenges.
Self-compassion, what does that look like in practice?
It's about treating yourself with the same kindness and understanding that you would offer to a friend who's going through a tough time. It's about acknowledging your feelings without judgment and reminding yourself that you're worthy of love and belonging, even when things are hard.
Because let's face it, everyone experiences friendship bumps in the road at some point. It's a normal part of growing up.
Exactly. And one specific challenge we need to address, both for kids and parents, is the issue of bullying. Kid Confidence tackles this head-on, offering insights into the dynamics of bullying and advice on how to handle it.
Yeah, I think sometimes there's confusion about what actually constitutes bullying.
You're right. Not all unkind behavior is bullying. Bullying involves a power imbalance, where someone is repeatedly targeted and feels unable to defend themselves. It's not a one-time thing, it's an ongoing pattern of harassment and intimidation.
And the book makes a really important point that often ending bullying requires adult intervention. Parents need to be aware of what's happening and work with the school to create a safe and supportive environment for all children.
Absolutely. Open communication between parents, teachers, and school administrators is key.
And for kids who are being bullied, it's crucial to validate their feelings, let them know they're not alone, and help them develop strategies for coping.
Right. That might involve teaching them how to respond assertively, encouraging them to connect with supportive peers, or even seeking professional help if the bullying is severe, or having a significant impact on their well-being.
Wow, this has been such an insightful deep dive. We've covered so much ground today. From the surprising downsides of traditional praise to practical strategies for fostering genuine connection, competence, and belonging. One of the key takeaways for me is that real self-esteem isn't about feeling superior or being perfect. It's about moving beyond self-focus and connecting with others in meaningful ways.
I think that's beautifully put. And to our listeners out there, I'd like to leave you with this. What's one small step you can take today to help your child move away from self-criticism and towards genuine connection and a sense of competence? Remember, even small changes can make a big difference.
Absolutely. We encourage you to keep exploring the insights from Kid Confidence and to keep those conversations about self-esteem going with your kids. Thanks for joining us on this deep dive.